In the theater of human life, every soul hides behind a mask. The polite smile, the rehearsed charm, the carefully chosen words. These are not the truth. They are but the persona, a costume we wear to survive the judgment of the world. Yet behind this fragile veil, the unconscious waits, whispering, restless, yearning to reveal the true character that lies beneath. But here is the secret. If you wish to see someone's real nature, you need not search their entire life story, nor decode their endless words. You need only pay attention to two things, two subtle signs where the mask always slips. Once you see them, you will never look at people the same way again. Listen closely, for this is where the mystery begins. When we look at people, we are often seduced by their words. They tell us who they are. They tell us what they believe. They tell us what values they stand for. Yet the deeper psyche laughs softly at this illusion, because words belong to the realm of the persona, the carefully constructed mask each of us wears. This mask is not false in itself, but it is incomplete. It is the self that wishes to be seen, rather than the self that truly is. If you wish to see through this veil, you must not place your trust in speech alone. For language is the servant of consciousness, and consciousness, as Carl Jung reminded us, is but a small island floating on the vast ocean of the unconscious. Words can be rehearsed, they can be polished, they can be sharpened like a sword. But behavior, true, unguarded behavior, springs from the deeper currents of the psyche. When a person acts without calculation, when their unconscious takes the wheel, they reveal more of themselves than 1,000 sentences ever could. Observe closely. The unconscious reveals itself in patterns, not in isolated moments, but in repetitions, in rhythms, in subtle echoes across time. A man may say, "I am generous," but does his hand hesitate when asked to give? A woman may declare, "I am kind," but how quickly does her voice turn sharp when no one of importance is watching? These are not accidents. They are the footprints of the inner archetypes moving through the individual. Think of the persona as a mask that protects the ego, a mask that smiles even when the soul is frowning. The unconscious, however, has no mask. It speaks through tone, gesture, posture, the small reactions no one rehearses. This is why, in Jung's psychology, dreams and slips of the tongue are sacred. They bypass the rehearsed self and allow the hidden soul to speak. In waking life, it is the same. The unconscious leaks through behavior, especially in the small moments when vigilance grows weak. Consider this: when someone is under no obligation to impress, when the world is not watching, the truth emerges. How do they treat the cashier, the janitor, the one who cannot elevate them? Their smile in such moments is worth more than all the promises they may ever speak. Jung understood that archetypes express themselves in action. The king archetype does not merely declare, "I am just." It shows itself in the way he treats even the lowest in his kingdom. The trickster archetype does not say, "I am deceitful." It moves through little lies, sudden betrayals, subtle manipulations. These behaviors are not inventions of the moment. They are symbolic expressions of the inner myth that a person is unconsciously living out. The unconscious seeks expression, and it will find a way. If it is denied in words, it will show itself in habits. If it is denied in habits, it will show itself in dreams. If it is denied in dreams, it will erupt in crises and conflicts. This is why paying attention to behavior, rather than words, is a key to seeing someone's true character. Behavior does not lie. It is the stage upon which the unconscious writes its story. Notice how often people reveal themselves in contradictions. They say, "I am not angry," yet their eyes narrow, their tone sharpens, their hands clench. They insist, "I am humble," yet they cannot resist boasting when the opportunity arises. Such contradictions are not flaws of language. They are the shadow announcing itself. The shadow cannot be spoken away, for it is not of the realm of speech. It belongs to instinct, to behavior, to the raw expression of the unconscious. Carl Jung once wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Pay attention, then, to how people shift in the presence of others. How do they behave when power is reversed? When someone else shines brighter, when they are placed in the shadows of another's success. These moments reveal what words conceal. For envy, insecurity, and fear are not easily hidden in behavior. They break through the mask, showing us the archetype that dominates within. The unconscious lives in patterns that repeat across relationships, across decades. Watch how a person moves through the story of their life. Do they continually cast themselves as the victim, repeating the archetype of the wounded child? Do they continually dominate, unable to resist the role of the tyrant king? Do they wander restlessly, never satisfied, embodying the eternal seeker? Words may deny these truths, but behavior repeats them endlessly, like an ancient myth trying to retell itself through one more generation. To see someone's true character, then, is not to listen to what they tell you, but to observe what the unconscious reveals in their living patterns. The unconscious does not care for appearances. It is not bound by social masks. It reveals the archetype that shapes a life, whether the person is aware of it or not. And here lies the mystery. When you learn to observe behavior with the eyes of the unconscious, you do not merely see another person more clearly. You begin to see the archetypes, the myths, the shadows and lights that animate all of humanity. Each person becomes a mirror, reflecting not only their own soul, but also the great patterns of the collective unconscious. There are two secret doors through which the unconscious slips past the mask of the persona, two subtle windows where the true soul is revealed. The first is found in how a person treats those who hold no power over them. The second is hidden in how they respond to adversity, when fate no longer obeys their will. Together, these two indicators unveil the psyche in its rawest form, as if the veil of the persona were suddenly torn away by invisible hands. Let us begin with the powerless. It is easy to show charm to those who can advance us, to smile when the boss is watching, to extend politeness to someone we admire. But the mask grows heavy when directed toward the unnoticed, the invisible, those the ego believes it has no reason to impress. In these moments, the unconscious rises from the depths. Watch how a person treats the waiter who serves them, the beggar who asks for a coin, the child who stares with wide eyes, or the animal that cannot speak back. The archetype is revealed here. The king within shows himself not when addressing other kings, but when responding to the humblest of servants. The tyrant reveals himself in cruelty disguised as indifference. The caregiver archetype is glimpsed in the quiet act of kindness offered when no one applauds. This first door is vital because it bypasses self-interest. The persona exists to navigate society, to gain approval, to maintain an image, but when faced with the powerless, the ego feels no pressure to perform. And in that silence, the unconscious seizes the stage. Every glance, every tone, every gesture becomes a revelation of the archetype guiding the soul. Jung reminds us that the unconscious does not remain hidden forever. It demands expression. And so it emerges, not in the grand speech, but in the smallest action. Now let us turn to the second door, the response to adversity. If the powerless reveal a person's attitude toward others, adversity reveals a person's relationship with themselves. Life is not a gentle flow of success and ease. The psyche is shaped in the crucible of suffering. When the storm comes, when the unexpected breaks the fragile plans of the ego, the true nature of the soul is revealed. Some grow resentful, blaming the world, turning their pain outward in bitterness. Others collapse inward, drowning in despair, unable to hold the weight of the archetype pressing upon them. But there are some who awaken the hero within, who suffer with dignity, who transmute pain into wisdom, who walk through darkness without surrendering the light within. Adversity is the stage where the shadow steps forward. The shadow is everything the ego rejects, everything it denies or fears to acknowledge. In times of ease, The persona can keep the shadow at bay, hidden behind routines and pleasantries. But when life cracks open, when the ego is struck by misfortune, the shadow pours forth. This is why Jung believed suffering to be a teacher of the soul. It strips away illusion and leaves only the naked self. Observe closely in these moments, for here the unconscious shows whether the individual is guided by resilience, humility, and growth, or whether they are enslaved by bitterness, envy, and fear. These two indicators, the powerless and adversity, are mirrors reflecting the archetypes within. When someone stands before the powerless, we see whether the archetype of the ruler within them is just or tyrannical, compassionate or cruel. When someone faces adversity, we see whether the archetype of the hero awakens, whether the wise old man or woman whispers through them, or whether the trickster sabotages their path, pulling them into self-destruction. These are not surface reactions. They are symbols of the deeper myth each person is unconsciously living. Think of the one who bows gently to a child, who bends to listen to a beggar's story, who softens their tone to an animal that cannot speak back. Their unconscious carries the archetype of the nurturer, the healer, the soul that recognizes value not in power, but in being. And think of the one who lashes out in frustration when adversity arrives, who blames, curses, or grows bitter. Their unconscious reveals a shadow unresolved, a battle not yet won within. Jung would tell us that such a person has not yet met their shadow honestly, and so it spills outward into the world. What makes these two doors so important is that they are moments the ego cannot fully control. With the powerless, the ego sees no reason to pretend. With adversity, the ego loses its grip entirely. In both cases, the unconscious takes the stage, and the performance of the persona collapses. This is why you can learn more about a person in their worst storm, or in their treatment of those beneath them, than in 100 conversations. These two signs are not only windows into another's psyche, they are invitations into your own. When you encounter the powerless, how do you respond? Do you treat them as invisible, or do you see the divine image even in the smallest soul? When you face adversity, do you allow bitterness to devour you, or do you listen for the voice of the inner guide, the archetype that whispers of meaning beyond suffering? Jung's psychology is not only about seeing others, but about daring to confront the archetypes within ourselves. For the psyche is not silent. It reveals itself constantly in these two moments: how we treat those with no power, and how we face life when it refuses to obey our will. In these places, the soul speaks without disguise, and the archetype beneath the mask finally steps into the light. When we look into the hidden currents of the human soul, we find that people are not merely individuals, but living expressions of deeper forces. Archetypes that have existed long before them, and shadows that wait silently in the depths. These psychic structures are timeless. They are the myths that repeat through each generation, the ancient patterns that shape how we love, how we fear, how we suffer, and how we rise again. And it is precisely in the moments when the mask of the persona slips, when a person interacts with the powerless, or when they stand trembling before adversity, that these archetypes and shadows emerge most vividly, revealing the hidden soul behind the performance of everyday life. The persona is delicate, like a fragile costume designed for society's stage. It tells the world, "This is who I am." Yet beneath it, the unconscious carries a theater of its own, populated with symbols, images, and figures that have lived in the human imagination since the dawn of time. Jung called these figures archetypes: the eternal king, the trickster, the wise old man, the child, the mother, the hero. They live within us, and though we may deny them, they speak through us. When life presses us, when the powerless or adversity call us into action, these archetypes rise from the unconscious and take the stage. Observe how the archetype of the ruler manifests when a person encounters those beneath them. If the ruler within is wise, their behavior radiates dignity, justice, compassion. They treat the powerless as part of their kingdom, worthy of respect. If the ruler within is tyrannical, their shadow distorts the archetype into arrogance, cruelty, disdain. The same archetype exists in both cases, but one has been integrated, balanced, made conscious, while the other remains in shadow, erupting with destructive force. This is the difference between the king who blesses and the tyrant who crushes, the same root archetype, but revealed through its light or its shadow. The trickster, too, often dances in such moments. The trickster archetype delights in deception, in masks, in games. Watch closely when someone faces adversity. Do they smile while secretly scheming, attempting to twist fate in their favor through manipulation? Do they present themselves as victims, when in truth they are bending reality to escape responsibility? The trickster is present here, laughing through the cracks of the persona, but the trickster is not only destructive. In its light, it teaches adaptability, humor, the ability to break rigid patterns. In its shadow, it becomes deceit, sabotage, betrayal. These dualities reveal themselves when the pressure is greatest. And then there is the hero. The hero does not emerge when life is comfortable, but when the storm rages. When a person faces suffering, the archetype of the hero may awaken, urging them to rise, to endure, to transform suffering into meaning. Yet even the hero carries a shadow, for heroism can turn into arrogance, martyrdom, or the need to conquer endlessly. Jung knew that no archetype is purely light or purely dark. Each contains both poles, and it is the way we integrate them that determines whether we live in balance or are consumed by our own inner forces. The shadow is the great counterpart of every archetype. It is the denied, the repressed, the unwanted. When someone insists they are endlessly kind, their shadow may hold cruelty. When they present as strong, their shadow may conceal fear. When they seem humble, the shadow may hunger for recognition. And in the moments when the powerless or adversity call forth a response, the shadow slips free. Listen not to the words of denial, but watch the body, the tone, the choices made when no one applauds. The shadow shows itself in the impatience, the outburst, the bitterness, the dismissive glance. It shows itself in envy, in scorn, in sudden cruelty that the ego cannot explain. These are not accidents. They are eruptions of what the conscious mind refuses to own. To see these archetypes and shadows is to glimpse the deeper myth a person is living. One may unconsciously play out the role of the wounded child, seeking endless protection, yet resenting those who offer it. Another may embody the eternal seeker, always chasing something new, never satisfied with what is before them. Another may fall into the tyrant, cloaking their domination beneath words of authority and order. The mask, the persona, tells one story, but the archetype, when awakened in these charged moments, tells the true myth the soul is acting out. Think of how you have seen it in others. Someone speaks of peace and kindness, but when the powerless confront them, their hidden tyrant emerges. Another suffers quietly, never boasting, yet when adversity strikes, you glimpse the hero standing firm against the storm. Another laughs at their pain, pretending indifference, yet beneath the laughter you sense the trickster, both playful and destructive. Archetypes are not abstractions. They are living realities within the psyche, speaking through behavior more loudly than any words could. And what of your own soul? The archetypes live there as well, waiting for the right moment to surface. When you are faced with the powerless, which archetype moves within you? Do you become the ruler who blesses or the tyrant who scorns? When adversity presses upon your life, does the hero awaken, or does the shadow drag you into despair? The unconscious is always watching, always waiting, always seeking expression through these timeless forms. Archetypes and shadows are not inventions of the mind, but ancient realities carried by every human being. They shape our behavior, our reactions, our choices, and though the persona tries to keep them hidden, they emerge most vividly in those very moments when control falters, when power is absent, when suffering arrives. In those moments, the archetypes step forward, the shadow speaks, and the mask of the persona falls away, revealing the hidden soul that has been there all along. There comes a point in every encounter when you begin to sense what truly guides another human being. It is not their words, nor their reputation, nor even the image they work so carefully to protect. It is something far deeper, hidden beneath the surface, revealed only when the unconscious speaks through behavior. By observing how they treat those without power, and how they endure the weight of adversity, you come to see the hidden compass of their soul, and that compass points in one of three directions: integrity, ego, or unresolved shadow forces. Integrity is not simply honesty. It is alignment between the conscious self and the deeper self, between what is spoken and what is lived. When integrity guides a person, there is a unity between persona and archetype. The mask is not abandoned, but it is transparent, allowing the light of the true self to shine through. Such a person treats the powerless with dignity, not because they must, but because their soul recognizes the shared humanity in every face. Such a person responds to adversity not with bitterness, but with a quiet strength, as though they have heard the voice of the archetype of the wise guide whispering, "Endure, grow, transform." Integrity reveals itself in consistency, the same soul in moments of power as in moments of helplessness, the same essence in times of fortune as in times of loss. It is a sign that the individual has faced their shadow, integrated it, and no longer hides behind denial. Ego, however, tells another story. The ego lives for appearances. It fears exposure, and so it clings to the mask of the persona as though survival itself depended on it. When the powerless approach, the ego calculates, do I gain something here? Do I lose something? If neither is true, it dismisses, ignores, or mistreats, for the powerless offer no fuel to the ego's hunger for recognition. And when adversity strikes, the ego trembles, for suffering exposes its fragility. It lashes out, blames, clings desperately to control, because it cannot surrender. The ego may appear confident, but beneath the surface it is brittle. It seeks validation, applause, and external affirmation to maintain its illusion of strength. By observing carefully, you will see this hunger in action. The smile that disappears when no one important is watching, the bitterness that rises when the world denies them their reward. Ego is not inherently evil, but it blinds the soul, cutting it off from the deeper self and keeping it trapped in surface appearances. And then there are the unresolved shadow forces. These are the hidden powers of the psyche that have not been integrated, the denied aspects of the self that return disguised in behavior. When the powerless enter their presence, the shadow erupts as cruelty, arrogance, or mockery, as though the person were unconsciously punishing in others what they cannot face within themselves. When adversity comes, the shadow may manifest as despair, rage, envy, or sabotage. The unresolved shadow does not whisper like the wise guide. It shouts through the body, through sudden bursts of anger, through cold indifference, through acts of harm cloaked in justification. These shadow forces are not always visible immediately, but if you watch the patterns, you will see them repeat again and again, until the individual has no choice but to face them. What makes these observations so powerful is that they reveal the story the soul is truly living. Integrity is the story of one who has begun to unite their inner world, who walks toward wholeness. Ego is the story of one who remains trapped at the surface, always performing, never descending into the depths. The unresolved shadow is the story of one who is haunted by what they refuse to acknowledge, destined to repeat the same cycles until the unconscious is brought into the light. Watch the way someone's eyes shift when speaking to those they cannot gain from. Watch the way their voice trembles, hardens, or softens when life denies them what they expected. These small observations are not trivial. They are revelations. They tell you whether you are in the presence of someone who walks with the self, someone who lives for the ego, or someone ruled by shadows they do not yet understand. Jung would remind us that all three live in each of us. integrity, ego, and shadow are not separate categories of people, but dimensions of the same soul. The difference lies in which dimension dominates, in which voice is allowed to steer the course of a life. Integrity carries with it the archetype of the sage, the healer, the just ruler. Ego carries the restless energy of the trickster, always hiding, always reshaping, but never at peace. The unresolved shadow carries the weight of the monster at the edge of the myth, the dragon that threatens until it is confronted. And when you observe people through these lenses, you begin to see not only individuals, but living myths, ancient stories retelling themselves in the gestures and choices of everyday life. The powerless and adversity are simply mirrors. They do not create integrity, ego, or shadow, they reveal them. They strip away the persona and give the unconscious a stage. In those moments, the soul speaks without disguise. And it is here, if you watch with Jung's eyes, that you will see whether one is guided by the inner compass of the self, or whether they remain lost in the illusions of ego and the storms of shadow. So much of what we call character is only a mask, a shimmering reflection on the surface of a far deeper sea. Yet if you know where to look, at how a person treats those who hold no power, at how they endure the storms of adversity, you will glimpse the truth the mask cannot hide. There, in those moments, the unconscious rises, the archetypes stir, and the shadow whispers. You are not only seeing another soul, you are being shown your own reflection, for the powerless will always appear in your life, and adversity will always find its way to your door. When they do, the question is not only what you will see in others, but what others will see in you. Will they witness integrity shining through the cracks of your suffering, or ego scrambling to preserve its fragile mask, or shadows breaking loose to act in your stead? Carl Jung taught that what is unconscious will one day be lived as fate. To know another's character is to watch destiny unfolding before your eyes. To know your own is to begin the long, difficult journey toward wholeness. And if you dare to look honestly, you may discover that the face you show the world is but the beginning, while the face hidden beneath carries the myth you were born to live.